Oil experts predict prices at the pump will rise as the conflict in the Middle East escalates.
Do you remember the last time you filled up your gas tank without worrying about the price? For millions of Americans today, every stop at the pump comes with a sigh. Not because the car is broken, but because gas prices have shot up too fast, too suddenly, and show no signs of slowing down. Tensions in the Middle East are driving global oil prices higher, and nowhere is that more painfully clear than right here at the gas station down the street. In states where the cost of living is already sky high, this isn't just another expense, it's the breaking point for working class families trying to hang on. Today we're taking a hard look at the 10 US states hit hardest by skyrocketing gas prices. Because sometimes it's not the big things that wear you down. It's the small, relentless ones, like watching the numbers climb with every gallon you pump. California has always topped the nation in fuel prices. That's nothing new. But in the current climate, with global oil markets rattled by Middle East tensions holding the title of America's most expensive gas, isn't just a label anymore, it's a crushing weight on millions of residents. According to the latest data from LA, California's average gas price is approaching $5 per gallon, nearly $1.50 higher than the national average. In some cities like San Francisco, Oakland, and Orange County, prices have already surpassed $5.30 a gallon. The real concern isn't just the number, it's the fact that prices have been climbing non-stop for 3 weeks straight. California has a very specific challenge: limited public transit and long distances between home and work. That means people in places like Riverside, Bakersfield, and Sacramento, where housing is cheaper, end up paying more simply because they have to drive further. Rising fuel costs are hitting the working class hardest, especially those whose jobs require constant mobility: rideshare drivers, delivery workers, mobile nurses. A recent report from the California Energy Commission revealed that while overall gas consumption hasn't dropped, complaints about rising operating costs in the logistics sector jumped nearly 28% in just the first quarter of 2025. But it doesn't stop there. Fuel inflation is cascading through every link in the supply chain, from transporting crops out of Central Valley to moving goods through the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. Every stage is becoming more expensive, and the end result is showing up where it hurts most, at the grocery checkout. In a state already crushed by high housing costs, now families are bracing for even more expensive food. California has a strong economy, but no economy is immune when the price of something everyone has to buy every single day spins out of control. And if even California, with its massive budget and tight regulatory framework, is struggling to keep up with soaring gas prices, just imagine what's coming for the states that import all their fuel, have no local refineries, and zero reserves to fall back on. Hawaii. In Hawaii, people aren't just paying for gas, they're paying for distance. Everything here has to be shipped in by boat or flown in by air. There are no interstate highways, no pipelines, no local oil fields to tap into. So when global oil prices shift, Hawaii feels it first and worst. Right now, the average price of gas in the state is pushing $4.50 a gallon, the highest in the country outside of California. But here's the difference: in California, you still have options. In Hawaii, you don't. Public transportation is limited. The islands are small, communities are spread out, which means most people rely almost entirely on personal vehicles. And every gallon of gas doesn't just fuel a commute, it touches every part of life: deliveries, school, drop-offs, medical care, tourism, and logistics. When fuel prices go up, everything goes up. One inter-island freight driver reports fuel costs rising nearly 20% compared to last year, with no increase in pay or fuel stipend. Meanwhile, working families are being squeezed from both sides: sky-high housing costs, soaring gas prices, and stagnant wages. Some are selling their second cars. Others are canceling summer vacations, not because they don't have time, but because they can't afford to fill the tank. And it's not just individuals feeling the pinch. Local businesses are getting crushed under a chain reaction of rising costs. Food distributors, restaurants, even healthcare systems are bracing as weekly transport expenses surge by thousands of dollars. If fuel prices keep rising along with global tensions, layoffs or price hikes aren't a possibility, they're almost inevitable. Living in Hawaii used to be a tropical dream. For many now, it's become a daily calculation. Fill up the tank or buy groceries, pick up another shift, or stay home with the kids. Because when you live on an island, there's no detour around rising costs, only tough choices straight ahead. Washington has never been known for low living costs. But now, with gas prices surging past $4.60 a gallon in many parts of the state, people here are beginning to feel like they're being cornered into a quiet crisis, one with no clear way out. Unlike California, where high gas prices have become something of a new normal, Washington once believed it could maintain stability through forward-thinking energy policies. That hope didn't last long. New environmental regulations, while well-intentioned in the long run, have pushed fuel prices up faster here than in almost any other state, and residents weren't given time to gradually adjust. There's no buffer, just two options: pay more or cut back on other basics. A mid-level office worker in Tacoma might drive 60 miles a day for work. That commute alone can now cost over $80 a week in fuel, and their paycheck hasn't budged. For a two-car household, that means close to $700 a month just to keep moving. No lights, no groceries, no comfort, just gas. The situation grows even more dire in Washington's mountain towns and remote communities, where public transportation isn't an option. Retirees in Spokane are now making impossible choices: skip a routine checkup or hold off on prescription refills, all because both rely on a full tank of gas. It's not just families that are feeling the strain. Small businesses, from flower shops to repair garages to local delivery companies, are scrambling to keep up with climbing costs. Some are tacking fuel surcharges onto their customers' bills, but not everyone's willing or able to pay extra. As the ripple effect spreads, customers pull back, revenue drops, and the layoffs start. All of this is happening in silence. There are no protests, no slogans, no headlines. Just hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians reluctantly reshaping their lives, one painful compromise at a time. Nevada. In Nevada, gas prices are no longer just numbers on a sign, they're a warning. A stark reminder of how thin the line can be between staying afloat and barely hanging on. In Las Vegas and the suburban towns surrounding it, gas is now hovering near $3.96 per gallon, about 25% higher than the national average. Unlike states like California or Washington, Nevada has long been known for its relatively lower cost of living, but that sense of ease has evaporated as fuel prices surge. Lunch trucks are cutting routes, weekend drives have disappeared, and the wallets of working-class city dwellers are being shredded one tank at a time. Things are even worse in Nevada's tourism-dependent economy. Drivers ferrying guests to casinos, outdoor festivals, and big-ticket events are now shouldering fuel costs that used to be covered by their tips or their own profits. But raising prices, out of the question. In a saturated market, even a slight uptick means losing business. It's not just visitors who are feeling the pain. Locals are trapped in the same math. One family living outside the city center now spends over $60 more per week just to keep the car running. Auto shops are hiking prices for oil changes and basic repairs as their own supply chain costs rise with fuel. The result: cars go longer without maintenance. Minor fender benders don't get fixed, and small debts quietly stack up day after day in dry, high-desert cities like Reno and Carson City, where water and electricity disruptions are already part of life. During summer, a new kind of shortage has emerged: fuel strain. When gas prices stretch beyond the limits of personal budgets, people don't stop driving because they can't. In these spread-out towns, personal vehicles aren't a luxury, they're survival. Even more concerning, this strain isn't just hitting working-class residents. Local mechanic school bus routes and small-town taxi services are now talking about cutting hours or reducing service altogether. These are the services that hold small communities together, and now they're on the chopping block. But perhaps the most troubling sign of all is the silence. No protests, no breaking news headlines, no viral outrage, just thousands of people quietly adjusting their lives to survive. When exhaustion becomes the new normal, that's when a crisis has truly taken root. Nevada used to be the land of bright lights, a place where people came to forget their worries. But now that dream is being replaced by a colder question: will my next work trip even cover the cost of today's tank of gas? Oregon. In Oregon, people are slowly learning to measure life by the gallon. That's not an exaggeration. In small towns like Klamath Falls or Ontario, where the nearest grocery store can be 40 miles away, gas prices soaring past $4.50 per gallon aren't just a number. They're the difference between driving to get food or staying home and going hungry, between getting a loved one to the hospital or hoping for the best. Unlike the transit-rich Northeast, Oregon doesn't have a widespread public transportation system. In rural areas, over 70% of residents rely entirely on personal vehicles. But now the cost of commuting is turning into a survival barrier. A construction worker driving 60 miles a day spends over $100 a week just on gas. Earning $16 to $18 an hour, once you subtract fuel, lunch, and insurance, you're left with less than $300 a week to support a family. Many have started taking temporary leave from work, and the ripple effect is immediate. Construction sites stall. Nail salons, pharmacies, and diners post "help wanted" signs. Workers can't afford to get to work. Employers can't keep shifts running. And just like that, the economic gears begin to grind to a halt. One group hit especially hard: the elderly and disabled, those who depend entirely on inter-county buses or non-emergency medical transportation. Since early June, multiple suburban bus routes near Portland have been slashed as fuel budgets buckle. Even emergency transport services are scaling back. A 68-year-old woman from Medford said, "I had to wait 3 extra days to get to dialysis." 3 days, that's the difference between living and not. What's terrifying is that all of this is happening in silence. No protests, no vandalism. Just households quietly withdrawing from daily life. Drivers quietly hanging up their keys. Communities quietly dimming like a city skyline where the lights go out one bulb at a time. And if a state like Oregon, a place rooted in self-reliance and long-term resilience, can be pushed to the edge of paralysis by nothing more than the price of gas, the question now is, how many other states are already standing in the dark, just waiting for their turn? Arizona. In Arizona, people aren't just feeling the heat from the desert sun, they're feeling it at the gas pump too. In Phoenix and Tucson, gas prices have surged to nearly $3.80 per gallon. That might not be the highest in the country, but in a state where triple-digit temperatures are a daily norm and air conditioning runs non-stop, every gallon of fuel isn't just for getting around, it's part of what keeps you alive. No one chooses to live under 110 degrees Celsius midday sun and then willingly pay extra to stay cool. But right now, that's exactly what Arizonans are doing. Gas has become more than a transportation cost. It's now a ticket to survival. The hardest hit middle-income families. Parents working full-time, running errands, getting the kids to school, often using fuel-hungry trucks or SUVs to handle it all. With current prices, they're spending over $80 more per week on fuel compared to just a few months ago, enough to make anyone stop and rethink even a grocery run. Worse still are outdoor workers, construction crews, electricians, delivery drivers. These are the people out the door before dawn and still on the job, deep into the night, even when it's 113 degrees Celsius. As gas costs rise, extra shifts no longer mean extra relief. Some are even turning to driving Uber during peak hours, despite the higher AC demands and fuel consumption, because the per-trip payout offers a shot at breaking even. In the outlying towns of Yuma, Prescott, and Flagstaff, the trade-offs are even harsher. Some residents now have to choose between filling their gas tank or running the air conditioner. Rural bus lines have been cut. Elderly folks rely on friends or neighbors just to get to medical appointments. One grandmother said she had to delay her doctor's visit by 2 weeks because, in her words, "My kids couldn't afford the gas to take me." The cost pressure is bleeding into the local economy. Freight courier services and even food supply chains are buckling. Trucks hauling produce from farmland to market can no longer count on stable delivery costs. Farmers unable to raise prices without losing customers are stuck absorbing the damage. If Arizona, a place built to endure the literal heat, is now struggling with the financial burn of rising fuel costs, what does that say about the state still clinging to trucking delivery and daily driving as a lifeline in a cost of living crisis already stretched to the limit? Pennsylvania. Not all the fallout from rising gas prices comes from the highway. In Pennsylvania, entire communities are feeling the breakdown starting from the railroads. This state was once the backbone of America's transportation network. From the coal fields to the steel mills, Pennsylvania's freight rail system moved the country. But today, businesses in Harrisburg and Pittsburgh face a tough dilemma. Keep running hybrid delivery systems that combine truck and rail, or shut parts of them down and wait for fuel prices to stabilize. The problem: no matter how much rail you use, the final mile almost always comes down to short-haul trucking. And with gas topping $3.90 a gallon, that last leg of the journey is becoming a money-losing gamble. According to the Pennsylvania Motor Truck Association, logistics costs have jumped 15% in just 1 quarter. A single steel shipment from Bethlehem to Philadelphia now carries over $600 in added fuel charges, and that's before peak season surcharges kick in. This doesn't just affect big businesses. In towns like Scranton and Allentown, where entire neighborhoods rely on machine shops and parts manufacturers' orders are being slashed, fewer trucks mean fewer shipments. Fewer shipments mean fewer jobs. It's a vicious cycle, and it's tightening its grip on industrial zones that never fully recovered after the pandemic. It gets worse in the mountain towns and small communities of western Pennsylvania. These places have no public buses, no trains, and residents depend entirely on personal vehicles. When gas goes up, a 60-mile round trip to the nearest doctor could cost nearly $40. For a retiree living on Social Security, that's a week's worth of groceries gone in a single appointment. And quietly, something else is happening. Gig drivers are disappearing. In rural areas, services like DoorDash and Uber Eats are drying up. Orders are going unclaimed. Restaurants are closing early because no one shows up to pick up deliveries. The outer layer of the consumer economy, the one that keeps local businesses alive, is starting to suffocate. If a state like Pennsylvania, once proud to be the economic hinge of the Northeast, is now measuring every gallon just to keep its supply chain moving through the night, then let's be clear, this gas crisis isn't a blip. It's a deep undercurrent slowly shifting the foundation beneath our feet. Illinois. In Illinois, the cost of a gallon of gas isn't just flashing on a digital sign at the pump. It echoes through every shuttered loading dock on the outskirts of Chicago, every canceled order in the suburban industrial parks, and every slowed down routine in working class households from Rockford to Peoria. As the third largest freight hub in the U.S., Illinois thrives on a sprawling network of highways, railroads, and distribution centers all centered around Chicago. But that very strength has become its greatest vulnerability, because everything here moves on wheels and every mile has a price tag, $5.13 per gallon. For semi-truck drivers, it's now a brutal choice. Take a break or accept every low-paying job, knowing their profit margins are practically wiped out. Mid-sized logistics firms, many still limping from the post-COVID economy, are downsizing, selling off rigs, cutting shifts, or quietly disappearing from the map altogether. Out west of the city, a once bustling warehouse that specialized in imported electronics has cut back from 3 shifts to 1, not because supply dried up, but because inland transport costs have spiked so high that clients are scaling back orders. And when that happens, it's not the executives who get let go first. It's the overnight workers, the security guards, the forklift drivers, the people who keep the place running when the rest of the world is asleep. The pain runs just as deep in southern Illinois. In towns like Mount Vernon and Carbondale, families are now planning gas station visits like they would plan around the weather, waiting for cooler days, just to avoid running the AC and burning more fuel. Local corner stores, once kept alive by neighborhood foot traffic, are now seeing sales plunge because nobody leaves home unless they absolutely have to. Illinois was once the beating industrial heart of America. But now that heart is slowing, not from lack of ambition, but from the rising cost of simply keeping it pumping. Fuel, once a basic operational input, is now eating away at the edges and burrowing toward the core. Utah. Beneath the dry desert sun of the American West, Utah is carrying a burden most people don't see. Every added cent per gallon of gas isn't just a number, it's another stone on the backs of working families and small businesses. It's not the crowded highways that are feeling it the most. The real pressure is showing up in suburban neighborhoods around Salt Lake City, Provo, and Ogden, places where the average middle-class household owns at least 2 vehicles. They don't have the luxury of choice. Everything from grocery runs to school drop-offs depends on personal cars. Gas prices in Utah are hovering around $3.30 to $3.40 a gallon, but the real issue is the shrinking value of every dollar spent. A gallon that costs a little more here means a lot less left over elsewhere. Unlike more densely populated states, Utah has built its economy around a younger hands-on workforce. Warehouse workers, construction crews, last-mile delivery drivers. These folks don't wait around for policy changes or subsidies. The shift hits them the moment they start their shift. It's there in their gas receipt. A delivery driver in Provo shared, "I'm out an extra few dozen bucks each week. That's money I'd plan to put toward retirement or lunch." But this isn't just about paychecks. In Utah, the pressure is bleeding into the home. A mom-and-pop corner shop in the suburbs raised prices slightly just to cover higher delivery costs. For a working-class couple with 2 kids, that bump means having to choose, do we put a little less in the soup or raise prices and risk driving away customers? In the booming construction sector where population growth is fueling a housing surge, the added costs show up everywhere. Line items like fuel surcharge and mobile crew stipend now sneak into every invoice. The bigger problem customers are starting to ask, do we really need to build right now? And increasingly, the answer is no. For many young people in Salt Lake City, the real sting is this high fuel prices are pushing the dream of homeownership even further out of reach. Mortgage rates are already sky high, and now banks are tightening lending because every dollar lost at the pump shrinks your buying power. Down payments are getting tougher, loan approvals harder. Utah's never lacked innovation. People talk about electric vehicles, fuel-sharing clubs, carpooling group fuel, buys. But these are small workarounds in a storm that's only getting worse. Right now, personal budgets are so stretched that another hike at the pump could stall entire housing projects and crush startup dreams, not because of policy, but because there's just no money left to fill the tank. Utah has long been called a rising star in the West, but now the real test is here. Schools, small businesses, housing developments, all of them hinge on one thing, that black liquid flowing into the tank. And if this pressure doesn't ease soon, Utah's boldest ambitions may be the first to run out of gas. Ohio. In Ohio, folks don't need to look at the gas price sign to know something's wrong. They feel it every time the heater kicks on every long morning commute, every canceled shipment from logistics companies that just can't afford the fuel anymore. Ohio isn't just a manufacturing state, it's the backbone of blue-collar America. Thousands of plants across Akron, Youngstown, and Toledo process everything from metals and chemicals to food products. But this is also a state of long distances. Many workers here live far from the major job hubs in Cleveland or Columbus, and with gas prices hovering near $3.60 a gallon, the daily commute is now costing some nearly $100 a week, almost 10% of their after-tax paycheck for the average working-class family. The pain in Ohio isn't a loud sudden blow, it's the slow grind of wear and tear. Like a machine running without oil, everything starts to drag. Grocery stores are raising prices to offset delivery costs. Food becomes more expensive. Mobile health clinics to rural communities, fewer trips. School districts that rely on contracted bus services. Cutting routes to remote neighborhoods. In Dayton, a once stable community is watching delivery drivers quietly exit the platform economy. Families are left waiting for groceries that never come. Gas stations are scaling back overnight hours because the cost of staying open just isn't worth it. Even local parks are cutting services not due to lack of interest, but because they can't fuel the patrol vehicles or maintenance trucks. But the most heartbreaking part, the feeling of having no choice left. People in Ohio aren't asking for luxuries. They just want to fill up their tanks so they can work, pick up their kids, and get home safely. But now even that has become a calculation, a tug of war between daily survival and long-term strain. Ohio has long stood as a symbol of the American middle class, the quiet engine that keeps the country running. But today that engine is slipping off track inch by inch. One more bump, one more price spike, and what little stability remains could vanish. So here's the real question: if gas prices keep rising and all we're told to do is ride it out, how long until the most basic parts of life going to work? Sending kids to school, staying in your home become out of reach. Nobody knows exactly what lies ahead if this energy crisis isn't brought under control. But one thing is clear, the first to suffer won't be big corporations, it'll be the families surviving on after-tax wages, living 1 gallon at a time. This video doesn't aim to divide or paint a dark picture of America. It's meant to inform, to caution, and to spark conversation based on real trends, real numbers, and real people. We fully respect the US Constitution and all federal regulations. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter, where we shine a light on the stories the mainstream media often overlooks. Every insight we share is grounded in real-time data and an independent perspective. We're not here to predict the future, but we believe that the more you understand, the better your community can act before it's too late.